This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, storm aftermath. Getting around the snowy streets and sidewalks is proving especially tricky for those with disabilities. Reviving healthcare in the small seaside community of Clark's Harbour. And feeling the love. Roses for shoppers. A day late, but hey, it's the thought that counts.
Onshore flurries and winds easing tonight, tracking an Alberta clipper which will clip southwestern parts of the province with some light snow on Friday. Your full forecast is coming up.
Good evening. If you've been trying to walk anywhere in Halifax or Sydney lately, you've probably realized it's difficult to get around in some areas following another winter storm. That's having a disproportionate impact on people with disabilities. As Gareth Hampshire tells us, it's even preventing some from going outside at all.
Milena Kazanavicius is not going too far from her home because she's finding the sidewalks difficult to navigate.
As a person who's completely blind, it is quite challenging.
It means she's spending most of her time inside.
You can't tell where the curbs end, whether you've crossed the street or not. You know, you've got the snow piles to climb over.
There are icy spots that are tricky after a strong nor'easter this week brought upwards of 30 centimetres of snow to some areas. In Cape Breton, where they were already digging out from up to 150 centimetres, crews are trying to clear and widen roads and the sidewalks as fast as possible. But they're having to go back to some that were cleared after the last storm. The municipality released a statement explaining a full fleet of equipment has been running around the clock, and while sidewalks continue to be cleared, is asking drivers to look out for pedestrians on the road. The Reachability Association in Halifax, that offers free employment and self-management programs to anyone facing barriers, is making sure its programming is still available virtually.
We've had to make an accommodation, and our accommodation, in order to equalize the playing field, is putting some classes online, and we never bring clients in, period, after a storm, even if some folks are opening.
Some of the most slippery spots are like this, where there's still a covering of snow, but underneath it, ice. The municipality says the blowing snow in Halifax is meaning crews are having to go back to some sidewalks to redo them, but has operations in all areas, tackling the job, and is thinking of access for everyone when doing it.
Accessibility is always kept in mind, especially when clearing places like sidewalks, crosswalks, bus stations, transit stations, and crews will use salt anywhere that they find ice.
Milena Kazanavicius has her own strategy to stay safe when she goes out.
Calling around, is your sidewalk clear? Can I get here? Can I get there?
People in Halifax and the CBRM can report snowy or icy sidewalks by calling 311. Gareth Hampshire, CBC News, Halifax.
A 24-year-old woman suffered life-threatening injuries after she was hit by multiple vehicles in Eastern Passage this morning. Police say the woman was crossing Main Road between Hines Road and Howard Avenue around 6:30. She was struck by a GMC Sierra traveling north and then by a Honda Civic traveling south. She was rushed to hospital. The drivers and passengers of both vehicles involved in the collision were not hurt. Police are still investigating. A corporation co-owned by 13 Mi'kmaq communities is investing in new battery plants with Nova Scotia Power in what both parties are calling a step toward reconciliation. The Indigenous-run agency announced the project today, which is expected to draw and store electricity during off-peak periods and release it back to the grid when needed. It will be the largest energy storage project in Atlantic Canada. Crystal Nicholas, the president of the corporation, says creating a greener future is a priority for the Mi'kmaq Nation, and the investment in the storage facility marks, quote, true economic reconciliation that will have a positive economic impact on the First Nations communities.
We have communities that are struggling. You have a few communities within the province that are capable of actually doing what they need to do for their communities, but you have a lot that don't. With proponents coming in and working with the WMA, who represent all 13 equally, it gives all 13 the ability to participate in all of these projects.
Construction of the storage project will begin this year in White Rock, Bridgewater, and Waverley, with the first site expected to be operational next year. About 10 years ago, Clark's Harbour lost the only doctor who provided service to the small fishing community. After years of work, the local municipal council and community members succeeded in getting health care services back in the area. As Michael Gorman reports, staff say the Mental Health and Addictions Clinic helps remove barriers to care and reduces stigma.
Clark's Harbour is picturesque. It's also remote. And like a lot of remote areas, there's been a lack of local healthcare services. A new clinic here is changing that. The Mental Health and Addictions Clinic opened in July and provides services for adults and young people. The people who work here say it addresses barriers to access. Before this clinic opened, people had to drive to Yarmouth or Shelburne for access to care.
Like people who live outside of the big city centers or even the towns have to travel for absolutely everything for appointments. And I think that, you know, in mental health, we really want to reduce barriers and we really want to make it easy for people to get the help that they need. And having those little clinics around, you know, free parking, you're just getting rid of some of those kind of reasons why people might not reach out.
Along with the free parking, there are other features here that distinguish it from a hospital environment. There's a playground out back and a boardwalk nearby. They're features staff here say help to build rapport with young people seeking help. Then there's the added benefit of a local touch. Casey Newell is from the area and jumped at the chance to be involved when the project was announced.
This is like the dream, right? Like, make the community healthy, make the community happy, and I think that that's what this space is doing at the end of the day, and I think that's the most important thing.
Newell and Lombard say their days are full when they're working here, and they say the service is being embraced.
I am hopeful that in this small community that the more kids that we can see, the less stigma is going to be around mental health, right? So it's kind of like starting with a new generation and kind of trying to teach them that talking about mental health and addictions in a small fishing community is actually a good thing.
The hope is that as word grows, more people will seek help and the services offered could expand. Michael Gorman, CBC News, Clark's Harbour.
Nova Scotian taxpayers are going to help pay to train continuing care assistants for one of the largest nursing home operators in the province. The $3.6 million pilot project will allow Shanix to train 48 CCAs over the next year. The Nova Scotia Community College is responsible for the program, but Shanix will handpick the students who will take the training. The Department of Labour, Skills and Immigration is subsidizing the wages of the trainees.
Between pay from their employer and a wage supplement from my department's Employment Nova Scotia division, participants will receive at least $18.48 per hour for a 35-hour work week. After their 6-month training is complete and they successfully pass the CCA exam, individuals are guaranteed a job at Shanix at a minimum rate of $22.22 an hour.
Balzer calls the program new and innovative. Trainees will also have the cost of their books and tuition covered by the province. Some may also be eligible to have childcare, transportation and moving costs paid for or subsidized. All right, let's check in with Ryan for our first look at the weather forecast on what was a breezy day in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, and really breezy for all, but gusty and even windy if you're in Inverness, Antigonish, Pictou. Those areas really were exposed to that onshore flow today. The blowing snow really continued. Those winds will ease slowly through the next few hours, thankfully, and really becoming much lighter for tomorrow. That's all because this nor'easter, which is still pounding away in Newfoundland and Labrador with very strong winds and snow and blowing snow there, is slowly going to work off to the north. And so its influence on us will become lighter as we work our way through tonight and certainly into Friday. And for Friday, that's when we start to watch this system, our Alberta Clipper, which we've been talking about for the last few days, and it will indeed clip southwestern parts of Nova Scotia with some flurries. Best chances are going to be Digby, Yarmouth, Shelburne, Bridgewater, and then perhaps edging up into Halifax and Sheet Harbour with an afternoon chance of a flurry along that Atlantic coastline. Building clouds elsewhere, maybe a flurry as far east as Kentville as well, but we're really not talking about a big impact here. So it'll be quiet to start tomorrow, and then those flurry chances will edge in as that Clipper again tracks just off to our south and west. So that won't be really influencing us all that much, but you know, clouds certainly building in with that. That shoots out, again, a quick moving system, a quiet start to Saturday. And then building clouds, and we are watching this system. Now, it has tracked a little bit closer than what we were thinking in the last couple of days, but one key feature here, there's Sable Island, and there is good consensus that it will be tracking south of Sable. And that is key because that means its impacts on us will be light. Flurries, maybe some light accumulation right along the Atlantic coastline into Cape Breton, but not expecting this to be a big impact system for us. Thankfully, we clear out on the other side of the system for Sunday with a few flurries and notably a little cooler as well. So lots to talk about with your full 7-day forecast, Tom, including that system there over the Great Lakes as well, which will influence us on Monday. So we'll talk about that coming up.
I know you'll walk us through it all. Thanks so much, Ryan.
Thanks, Tom.
An international manhunt is underway in South and Central America for a Nova Scotia man suspected of murdering a young Colombian mother he met on a dating app. Colombian police are looking for 50-year-old Jesse Gilbert Wiseman from Terrence Bay. Police say a young woman's body was found in a suitcase at Wiseman's apartment in Medellin. They believe Wiseman already fled Colombia for Guatemala last weekend. Complaints about fake immigration lawyers are on the rise, including here in Halifax. And in some jurisdictions in the country, it's so bad, the local bar associations are launching investigations and running programs to inform newcomers how to spot a fraud. The CBC's Alison Northcott has more.
This organization helps refugees settle in Montreal, but staff here have noticed a worrying trend. Newcomers handing over hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars to fake immigration lawyers or phony consultants.
Anyone that comes and say, I'm a lawyer, they believe it. They pay, but it results that they were not lawyers or consultants, and it has big impacts.
Fake lawyers will promise you the moon.
The Montreal Bar, which can prosecute fake lawyers in court, says it's been investigating a growing number of complaints around the illegal practice of immigration law.
These fake lawyers are approaching their victims on social media and through the web. They'll go to their victims, say that they're lawyers, take on their files, and if they do it at all, most often it'll be poorly done.
The consequences can be dire, from serious delays to deportation. That's why the bar launched this campaign, to help newcomers understand the risks and how to avoid them, including verifying a lawyer's credentials. The Canadian Bar Association says fake immigration lawyers and unlawful immigration consultants have popped up in other cities too.
It's so easy for someone who doesn't know the rules, the law, and the regulations to make a mistake in an immigration application. It's so difficult and challenging to try and fix it after.
When people take advantage of you.
And Kit Joshi dealt with an unauthorized immigration consultant in Halifax who never submitted his file.
We were new to Canada, not even very familiar with the rules and regulations. The only thing was we were trusting the system and the person who was majorly belonging to our own community.
Ultimately, he got his permanent residency, but the experience delayed the process and cost him thousands of dollars. The Montreal Bar says when it comes to fake lawyers, look out for red flags like promises of a quick and easy process, and file a complaint if you suspect wrongdoing. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
This month marks the 10th anniversary of the release of the Ivany Report, which set ambitious targets to revitalize the Nova Scotia economy. It outlined 19 goals, including increasing immigration, business startups, tourism, and raising the employment rate of First Nation and African Nova Scotians. The pandemic prevented some goals from being achieved, but Dom Bureau of the One Nova Scotia Coalition, the group tasked with pursuing the goals, says Nova Scotians need to keep pushing.
Long-term commitment to continuing to build the economy by embracing this modern industrial revolution that we find ourselves in, continue to build the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and welcoming people to the province, and really locking on this notion that we need a population growth. We do need to double our population in the province. And all that to say is that I'd much rather be managing the complications that come from growth and the complications that come from decline.
I'll talk to Dom Bureau about what has changed in the Nova Scotia economy in the past 10 years. That's our Newsmaker interview just after 6:30. May have come a day late, but 150 roses were handed out at the Halifax Shopping Centre today. The group known as Leave Out Violence, or Love Nova Scotia, planned on handing out the roses yesterday but decided to postpone because of the weather. Several members of their group handed the roses out to help promote acts of kindness, and their vision is for a world free of violence.
Fun event for us. The idea came from our youth and our leadership program. Was the world is what it is right now, and acts of kindness are what it's all about, you know. And they're never there's not enough on TV about it. There's not enough about the good people in the world.
The group offers programming that promotes access to spaces for Black, Indigenous, and youth of color from queer and straight communities. Coming up, Halifax Pride says it's taking applications for this year's festival and working on community relationships. A New York judge has confirmed today that Donald Trump's criminal trial on charges of falsifying business records can proceed.
Ahead.
Hey, having fun outdoors today. Ryan Snoddon back next with your full weather forecast. We'll see you here right after the break. All right, as we saw earlier in the show tonight, still lots of people still digging out, and as they're piling it up, there's less and less place for it to go. The banks are getting higher and higher.
Yeah, and the higher you reach, the more sore your back gets, right? So Lots of sore backs. Not yours, Tom. The running joke on the show is, of course, that Tom gets his kids to shovel his driveway.
I noticed you didn't come over to help this time either, Ryan. So, yeah.
That's true.
Next time. There'll always be another storm.
Yes, for sure. Let's have a look at this. I made this graphic today. Now, this is the Halifax area where we have, again, a ton of observations. These are from our volunteer observers. So over the last 2 weeks in the metro area, you can see anywhere from 60 to 90 centimeters of snow has fallen over the last 14 days. That is pretty close to what fell all of last winter, Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's convincing when you put it that way.
For sure. And then you look at where we are so far on the far right. That is how much we've had already this winter. And that already exceeds, of course, last winter. And you can see the average at the bottom there from the Citadel. That 30-year average is 154. So we're pretty much at an average winter already.
It's only the middle of February.
Yeah, with a month to go till spring. So yeah, just thought we'd share that. And of course, I mean, we're obviously above normal in across the province now, especially places like Cape Breton and the Northumberland Shore. You folks are well and above what you should be for a full winter. Now, as we look at those temperatures, right now, you can see -2 to -3 in the northeast, temperatures near the freezing mark for the Tri-County area. And as we look at those winds, whipping in from the north, they have been the factor today. Sustained 40, 50 kilometers per hour in through the eastern parts of the province, back off into the 20 range for the west. These gusts, 50, 60, 70 kilometers per hour, they have been pesky, and they will, again, thankfully continue to ease. Wind chill values minus double-digit range there, -6 to 8 in the west. There's the deck of clouds, which has been slowly migrating to the east and will continue to do so as that nor'easter spins off into the North Atlantic. There's our clipper. Behind the clipper, and with these systems, these Alberta clippers, as they develop just east of the Rockies and then sail into the Great Lakes, they really draw down lots of cooler air in their wake. And that's going to occur for us as well. But you can see that cold pocket that has sunk now down into the Canadian prairies. And that colder air will swing into the Great Lakes and then east into us as we set the stage for Sunday. So temperatures for tonight are going to be ranging from, for the most part, -8 to 12, but a little milder here in through the south and west and in the Yarmouth Tri-County area. And looks like Cape Breton will be right near -5 as well. I'm going to show you the gusts because, again, they have been the big story today, the universal story across the province. And you can see as we move through the next few hours, the winds will really back off from west to east. Cape Breton still gusting to 40 pretty much throughout the morning tomorrow, and then we're going to be seeing a slight reprieve maybe midday, and then behind that clipper the winds are going to punch in more northerly into the afternoon, and we'll still be gusting to 40 even in the late stages of the day tomorrow. -2 to -3 for Cape Breton. Note here, a mix of sun and clouds staying fair throughout the day tomorrow. Looking at a mix of sun and cloud for the Northumberland Shore, it looks like the clouds will peak in, or edge in, to the Eastern Shore region, and I think Amherst and Truro as well. Isolated chance of flurries, Kentville, Greenwood, better chance, Annapolis, Royal, Digby, Kedzie to Bridgewater, and southwest of this line. You folks here in the southwest, this is our best chance for seeing flurries tomorrow and maybe even picking up as much as 2, 3, 4 centimeters as that clipper does move to the south. -3 to -4 for the Halifax area, and it's certainly a chance for flurries here as well. As we time this all out, there's the system. There's the little brush that we have with it. That moves out, and there's the cold air spilling in behind. So that sets the stage for a cooler Saturday and Sunday. And then here comes our coastal system. And as I mentioned off the top, forecast models have been kind of trending that one a little closer. Close enough to keep an eye, that's for sure. Late day flurries, Yarmouth, Bridgewater, increasing clouds elsewhere on Saturday. And then that system, again, will be brushing close, yes, but it looks like it will be south of Sable Island, as I mentioned off the top of the show. And so what that means is that chance for some light accumulating snow Saturday night and into early Sunday morning with some lingering flurries in behind. Temperatures a bit cooler, but overall that does not look to be an impactful system. Monday, another little weak system comes through with some flurries. But again, nothing to write home about. Tuesday, Wednesday, quiet. The next system I think we'll really have to keep an eye on, Tom, is kind of late next week, but that one is a long way out.
There always seems to be one in our future.
There always
somewhere.
is. There's no such thing as a 7-day with nothing on it, it seems this winter anyway.
Okay, thanks so much, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, Halifax Pride announced this week that it's now taking applications for this year's festival in July. Interim Operations Manager Fiona Kerr spoke with the CBC's Jeff Douglas about mending community relationships after a year of uncertainty, including the cancellation of last year's parade. Have a look.
Over the past year and a half, there was oddness. I don't know if that's like, maybe I don't want to be trite about it, but that there, I didn't really understand, and I'm not sure how much of it was who we were talking to, what we were talking about as the media, but I'm wondering if you could tell me what was happening with Halifax Pride.
I don't have a super great answer because I wasn't in the room.
Right.
I wasn't there. I left in September of 2022, and there were a few different iterations of a board that kind of took things from there. When myself and our executive director left, the board that was in place decided to not rehire any full-time staff. They decided to run the festival volunteer, and we knew that wasn't possible. We knew they needed staff. And then over the course of about 6 months, there was just a lot of board turnover. And they got to the point we're at now, last year, February 2023, and they were just in this position where they had a lot of people who, while I do believe were dedicated and passionate, didn't have any institutional knowledge of the festival, really hadn't had any involvement with the operation side of Pride. And a lot of them just didn't have any event experience. So I think they had a lot of things working against them. And I, even now, knowing what I know, coming back in, getting access to documents, seeing the conversations they were having, I don't know if there was ever an outcome that involved a successful festival, truly.
Right.
Which is unfortunate. But I think they had a lot of things working against them.
Do you feel that now that things are kind of back on track, that you're at a stable place now?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. The group of people who stepped up at the AGM in October were a lot of past staff members and community members and community leaders who have worked with Pride in the past and kind of understood what we were always trying to do, and are super dedicated to kind of getting things back on track. And truly, it wasn't as off track as people thought.
And beyond the confidence, whether the parade would happen or not, like, do you feel that there are relationship issues there that have to be...
Less than people would think.
Okay.
I think a lot of people from the outside probably thought, like, it's ruined, like they've spent the last year maybe not doing anything and they've potentially ruined this amazing event, and that's definitely not the case. They definitely were quiet and like didn't get terribly far into planning, but in terms of actually ruining relationships that we had with other community groups, partners, funders, a lot of those are still intact. A lot of them are just happy to see familiar faces.
Who would you like to see applying to be part of this 2024 parade?
I think mainly all of the queer groups and organizations that missed out last year. The parade, just seeing the back end of the application, there was plenty of applicants. The parade would have been robust, but I think a lot of those queer groups lost a lot of faith in the organization, and not a lot of them applied. And I think it was mostly because they just didn't feel confident enough that it would happen. So I'm really excited for them to get to come back, because it's for them. It's for them, it's for the community. It's all about them being part of it.
And thanks, Jeff Douglas of CBC's Main Street. Up next, I'll talk with Don Bureau of the One Nova Scotia Coalition about what has changed in Nova Scotia 10 years after the release of the Ivany Report, which called for action on the economy. That's our Newsmaker interview. Stay with us. You're watching CBC Nova Scotia News. The Ivany report set out some ambitious goals back in 2014 to revitalize Nova Scotia's economy. While some of the 19 recommended goals have not been met, for example, increasing the number of business startups and raising the employment rate for First Nation and African Nova Scotians, others have. Among them, growing fisheries and agriculture exports, improving youth employment rates, and growing the population. Don Bureau is the president of Nova Scotia Community College and is with One Nova Scotia, the group tasked with measuring the progress being made on Ivany Port recommendations. Mr. Bureau, I guess overall, if we could begin, how are you feeling about the progress that is being made or not made, as the case may be?
Yeah, Tom, I'm feeling very positive after 10 years. You know, this report back in 2014 had a 10-year arc of time. It brought together 19 objectives. But for me, if you took the report and kind of shook it all out, Tom, there were three major imperatives that Ray Ivany would have said that we need to focus on. And those three would be the economy of Nova Scotia, the demography of Nova Scotia, and the third one was an interesting one, is kind of an attitudinal shift on behalf of Nova Scotians. And I think in all three of those, we're doing very well.
All right, let's look at some of those then. Let's begin with the economy. What do you think has changed in Nova Scotia in the 10 years since the report?
I think in the past 10 years, Nova Scotia has moved into what we call the fourth industrial revolution. And if you think back quickly, the first industrial revolution was focused on the capturing of steam. The second was really focused on the capturing of electricity. The third, about 30 years ago, was focused on the microchip. But now we have the world focusing in this fourth industrial revolution on the intersectionality between big data and automation and robotics and big blockchain computing. And you know, Nova Scotia is able to compete now with the best in the world because the most important factor of input, if you will, is human capital. And here in Nova Scotia, we are blessed with some very, very talented individuals that are driving the economy, and the world is taking notice of that, and they're coming to our shores to invest.
Okay, let's talk about that for a moment. Demography, a big overarching theme, as you say, in the report. There have been and are some of the biggest changes we're seeing in this province currently in demography. Am I right?
No doubt about it, Tom. You know, for the longest time, we had such an out-migration of our workforce. A lot of people would complete their post-secondary studies here in Nova Scotia and seek opportunity elsewhere. We were losing 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people net a year. And the Ivany Commission basically said that had to stop. And through a number of wonderful, I think, public policy decisions that our current government is making, our past government made, we've turned that around. And now we're growing 25 to 30,000 people a year. And I quite frankly, I think our current premier has it right. We have to double our population in the province of Nova Scotia to compete, again, with the best in the world.
There does seem to be a different attitude in the province, the report again calling for that. What would you say about that as it reflects or impacts the economy here?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. You know, at one time, our brand as a province many years ago was we competed on low-cost, low-skilled labor. Come to Nova Scotia, there'll be guaranteed lots of people who will be willing to work for, quite frankly, minimum wage. But I think there's a different confidence level now in the province. People are looking into a mirror and seeing a different Nova Scotia looking back at themselves. The second thing that I think has changed, Tom, significantly is we're much more welcoming, I think, as a province. We recognize the value of diversity. We recognize that by having the world kind of represented in our communities, we're able to be that beacon for economic prosperity. So that attitude of recognizing that it takes the whole world to come to our shores to represent the world is something that's changed significantly. And I think the third thing that's changed is people are recognizing the value of innovation, of being creative and entrepreneurial and using those skills to build that attitudinal skill to build a better tomorrow for our province.
It's been a bit of a turbulent 10 years too when you factor in the pandemic and the impact that has had on the economy and a number of things, high inflation and so on. What do you think Nova Scotia needs to do to go forward or advance on all of those 19 recommendations that you alluded to earlier?
Yeah, so you're right. Certainly 10 years ago, it wasn't contemplated of a worldwide pandemic. So for me, I think we need to kind of the three major buckets I still think are a priority for us to remain focused on. I think we need to think long term, Tom, that this is an arc of time. We spent the last 10 years focused on this, and we're going to spend the next 10 years locked on some major priorities for the province of Nova Scotia. This is not a one and done, it's not a short term solution. So, long term commitment to continuing to build the economy by embracing this modern industrial revolution that we find ourselves in, continue to build the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and welcoming people to the province, and really locking on this notion that we need a population growth. We do need to double our population in the province. And all that to say is that I'd much rather be managing the complications that come from growth and the complications that come from decline.
Well, just quickly before I let you go, on that point, is Nova Scotia properly planning for the kind of growth that we are seeing and expecting to continue?
Well, I think there's some areas that we've done very well. Again, I think our post-secondary institutions, our ability to welcome people to the shores and provide opportunities for them. In some examples, we're doing very well, Tom. But I think also there's areas in which we continue to need to work on. I believe Nova Scotia is a great province, but we're not perfect. And I think everyone would agree that there are some pressures, some tensions right now in society that we all need to lean into and collectively come together through collaboration to make even better this province that we live in.
10 years, big milestone. I appreciate getting your thoughts on it, Don Bureau. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Have a great day.
Coming up, new research followed polar bears near Churchill, Manitoba while they ate and found the bears struggled with less sea ice. Welcome back. Now to the latest on the Israel-Hamas war. Israeli troops raided the main hospital in southern Gaza today. The military says it has, quote, credible intelligence that Hamas was holding hostages there. The CBC's Abby Kuvasan reports.
The largest hospital in southern Gaza has been raided by the Israeli troops. The IDF ordered the facility to be evacuated of displaced civilians 2 days ago. Today it moved in with special forces. A doctor there told the Associated Press that one patient has died and several others were injured in the operation. Social media video shows chaotic scenes and gunfire can be heard in the background.
We have credible intelligence from a number of sources, including from released hostages, indicating that Hamas held hostages at the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis, and that there may be bodies of our hostages in the Nasser hospital facility.
Israel accuses Hamas of hiding among civilians and using medical facilities. International law experts say even if that was the case, Israel has an obligation to protect civilian infrastructure. Human Rights Watch says the IDF's repeated attacks on hospitals and ambulances must be investigated as war crimes. South of Khan Yunis, there are concerns about an IDF ground incursion into Rafah, where 1.4 million Palestinians, many who've been displaced multiple times already, are sheltering. Canada, Australia, and New Zealand have now issued a trilateral statement calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, deeply concerned about the impact on civilians if IDF troops enter Rafah. They say Palestinian civilians cannot be made to pay the price for defeating Hamas.
Large-scale military operations in densely populated areas risks extensive civilian casualties. Australia believes this would be unjustifiable. Our message to Israel is listen to the world, do not go down this path.
Since Hamas's attacks on Israel on October 7th, the IDF has rescued 3 hostages. More than 28,500 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza. The United Nations says many are women and children. Now, more than 20 Arab nations are looking to call for an immediate ceasefire at the UN Security Council. The U.S., with its veto power, has already said it will oppose the draft resolution, arguing it would hurt ongoing negotiations to pause the war. Abby Kuvasan, CBC News, London.
In New York today, a judge ruled that Donald Trump's first criminal trial will start on March the 25th. The judge dismissed Trump's motion to have the case tossed out. The case surrounds money paid to adult film actress Stormy Daniels 7 years ago. Chris Reyes has more.
Just as Trump's indictment last April on this case was a historic one, making him the first American president to face criminal charges, today's decision just as noteworthy as it sets into motion the first of 4 criminal cases that Donald Trump is charged in. March 25 will be jury selection. That decision handed down very quickly by Judge Juan Merchan. Soon after, he denied the motion to dismiss this case altogether made by Trump's attorneys. And despite repeated objections from Trump's lawyers, the judge put his foot down and very quickly attended to the logistics of the trial in March. There was a lot of discussion about how to choose an impartial jury, given the media attention that surrounds Donald Trump and the unprecedented nature of trying a former American president. Now, while the judge was able to shut down Trump's lawyers inside the courtroom, there was nothing stopping Trump from airing his grievances outside the courtroom.
There was no crime here at all. This is just a way of hurting me in the election because I'm leading by a lot. We're leading by numbers that nobody's ever seen before, and they figured this is their way of cheating this time.
The prosecution pointed out to the judge that Trump repeatedly tries to delay these trials to evade accountability and argued that the fairest way to conduct the trial is to make it quick. This one is expected to last 6 weeks. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
In India, farmers have occupied railroads and highways in another day of protest. Farmers continue to demand minimum prices for the crops they grow. The protests come 2 years after the Modi government reacted to earlier protests by repealing farm laws. At that time, Modi promised to find ways to support produce prices. Police have set up razor wire and deployed tear gas to keep demonstrators from marching on the capital of New Delhi. A union leader says he expects talks with the government would be held soon. A New Brunswick mother is sounding the alarm over a disturbing phenomenon known as sexploitation. The issue is close to her heart, because her son killed himself after being victimized online. Alexander Sibelman has more.
William Doiron's mother, Stéphanie Thériault, describes her son as being a ball of energy, refereeing hockey and playing since he was 5 years old. He looked out for kids at his school, she says. On the bus, one of the kids was getting bullied. It was William that helped him. William was a happy 16-year-old, she says. But that all changed after he started chatting with what he thought was a young woman on Snapchat. On October 29, 2022, his family returned home from a hockey game to find William had taken his own life. From what we were able to figure out, he thought he was talking with a young woman, his mother says. She sent sexually explicit photos and asked him to send some in return. He sent photos back, she says. And all this time, it was a criminal network. Thériault eventually learned from the RCMP that William had been a victim of sextortion, a form of financially motivated online blackmail. Police eventually traced the messages back to an organized criminal network in West Africa. She learned the extorter had demanded ransom, threatening to send William's images on Instagram. 3 days later, videos were sent. They convince you your life is over if you don't pay, she says. But if you pay, they're just going to ask you for more money. You shouldn't. William's story is one of a growing number of sextortion cases across Canada. In New Brunswick, RCMP have received 66 reports since 2023. 43 of those are since January. That spike is also being reported here at Canada's national tip line for online exploitation of children. Cybertip.ca is getting 10 reports per day.
These extorter groups are relentless.
The center's senior manager says criminals are using everything from social media to even online games to target kids.
We are now seeing a lot of tactics being used towards threats to harm the child, threats to harm their family members. And again, that relentless messaging that kids are receiving is just continuing to escalate their response to that. The onus really doesn't fall on parents in these circumstances. We really need platforms to start stepping up. They're providing access to these platforms to kids. They are purposely drawing kids onto their platforms and aren't really doing much to help protect them.
Stéphanie Thériault says she's speaking out to try to prevent a similar tragedy. It could happen to anyone, she says. Even if it happens, you'll get past it. Your life isn't over. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Moncton.
There's growing concern that dwindling sea ice is pushing some polar bears near Churchill, Manitoba, close to starvation. Using cameras and GPS, researchers effectively traveled with the bears as they searched for food. And as Nicole Mortellero tells us, what they saw was alarming.
Long regarded as an icon of the North, polar bears now face ever bigger challenges from declining sea ice in a rapidly changing climate. A new study led by the U.S. Geological Survey reveals what some are up against, using high-res color cameras that allowed researchers to almost see through the bears' own eyes. They tracked 20 of them near Churchill, Manitoba, to see how they fared with less sea ice. Forced to spend more time on land means hunting and eating fewer fatty seals, the bears' main food source, resulting in significant weight loss and drops in energy levels. The study found that without those crucial calories, some bears chose to do very little, practically hibernating and living off their fat reserves, while others tried to feed off berries, plants, or birds. One bear even swam a total of 175 kilometers in Hudson Bay, resting briefly on the floating carcass of a beluga whale she tried to eat. But overall, the food the bears consumed didn't make up for the energy they spent while foraging.
I think what our study was really getting at was what are the limitations to polar bears' ability to adapt. And I think that's what we found was that they had all of these different behaviors and a lot of energetic strategies, and none of that was able to prevent weight loss. So, that just suggests they do have some limitations.
Researchers determined that some bears had enough fat reserves to survive until the end of November, when the sea ice begins to reform in Hudson Bay. But some might not make it that long.
the Bears are doing what they've always done, whatever bag of tricks they've had, and they've been using them for probably thousands and thousands of years. It's not going to be enough.
While not all polar bear populations face the same threats, all are classified as a species of special concern in Canada, mainly due to the loss of sea ice. The question that remains is, will this highly resilient species be able to further adapt to the rapidly changing Arctic environment? Nicole Mortellero, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada's main stock index gained 1.6% Thursday, led by strong gains in the energy sector. Here's a quick look at the markets as we head to break.
For news you can trust, we have the latest on what's happening in your community and a weather forecast you can rely on no matter where you are in Atlantic Canada. I'm Amy Smith.
And I'm Ryan Snoddon.
Join us for Atlantic Tonight,
right after the National.
All right, so I think most people should be okay now. Those who wanted the snow got it. Those who got it and didn't want it are getting dug out.
That's right.
Nice to have a quieter weekend ahead of us, huh?
Thankfully, yeah. And everybody can get out and enjoy the snow. There wasn't really a lot, Yarmouth and Shelburne,
that's right.
in the last round, but that was taken care of. Snowpack might still be a bit low and towards the places like Digby County, but I think overall everybody's got enough to get out and enjoy. Have a look at our viewer picture of the day, and we're going to zoom in on the Halifax area with the sun breaking through the clouds. Dartmouth looking across the harbor.
Oh, wow. That is, what do you call that now, Ryan?
That's just the sun, just
is that what that
picturesque
is?
breaking through the clouds. Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that beautiful?
What kind of color filter did they have on the camera?
Well,
to get
yeah,
that?
for
Wow.
sure. That's it's definitely a dramatic pic.
Yeah.
Thanks to
Nicely
Joseph,
done, Joseph, yeah.
for sharing. But yeah, sun just perfectly breaking through the clouds there. Thanks to Joseph for sharing that. Now, as we look at the forecast, temperatures ranging between 0 in the southwest, closest to that low tomorrow. Maybe some light accumulating snow there, enough to certainly give a coating. And then, yeah, mix of sun and cloud, Cape Breton across to the Northumberland shore. Now, I should mention Cape Breton, Inverness County may see a few flurries for tomorrow in those onshore northwest winds. Now, you can see chance for some late day flurries on Saturday thanks to this system that we're going to be keeping an eye on. There's the first one. That one passes very quickly. And then keeping an eye on that weekend system, Tom, but as I've been saying throughout the program, I am encouraged, cautiously optimistic, given the fact that the tracks are pretty much nailed down that it's going to be south of Sable. So even if it does brush us, anything would be light, but we'll keep an eye on it.
Okay. Well, usually when people talk about music from the 80s, I know you're a big fan, Ryan, they're referring to hit songs from 40 years ago. These South Korean rappers are not the new kids on the block. Sunny and the Seven Princesses are K-pop's latest export, and they're all in their 80s. The song is about rural life, have spread far beyond their hometown with more than 77,000 views on YouTube.
The group formed last year, but the members have known each other since they were young. Their success has inspired 4 other groups from the same area. Some formed with the idea of staving off dementia and loneliness.
I got some great moves there too.
Yeah.
That's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.